No DQ Galaxy. We are live. It is Sunday morning, just after midnight. I am here to discuss the AEW Full Gear 2024 pay-per-view event. Shout out to the chat room. Thank you for tuning in live, and thank you to everybody watching, whether it's live or on demand. Either way, I appreciate your viewership and support. It is very late, so let's get right into the Full Gear recap. I'll try to give my thoughts as quickly as possible and not ramble on for too long about any particular match. You can check out full results of Full Gear over at nodq.com. We had our buy-in show. We had 3 matches. Anna Jay defeated Deonna Purrazzo. Then we had Buddy Matthews winning a 4-way match against Dante Martin, the Beast Mortos, Commander, and I think that was it. Buddy Matthews beat Dante, Mortos, and Commander. 4-way match. Then the final match was everybody's favorite, Big Boom AJ from the Costco guys, the TikTok viral sensation group. Big Boom AJ fought QT Marshall. Paul White, Mr. No BS, was the special guest commentator, and the Rizzler was the guest timekeeper. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was fine. It's a kickoff match. To me, it's no different than that time we had the WLC match in WWE. Now, granted, I don't know how effective it would be in getting people that are on the fence to buy the pay-per-view, but hey, I think the people that were going to buy the pay-per-view already made up their mind before the buy-in show even happened. In that case, you ask, well, what's the point of the buy-in show if you're not going to try and sell people last minute on the pay-per-view? I don't know. I do not know. Anyways, I didn't have a problem with it. It played out the way I expected it to. You had some interference from Aaron Solo, and then Big Justice, the kid, speared QT Marshall. Hey, look, QT Marshall is a prelim guy. Him taking a spear from a kid doesn't matter. That's QT's role. He's a comedy prelim wrestler. It's not like it's one of your top guys taking a spear from a kid. Anyways, Big Boom AJ won. Crowd loved these guys. Not my cup of tea, but could have been worse. It was perfectly fine. We kicked off the pay-per-view with Private Party defending the tag team titles against the Outrunners, the new sensation in AEW, Kings of the Black Throne, Malachi Black and Brody King, and the Acclaimed. Max Caster did his usual pre-match promo. Match was fine. It was a TV match. It wasn't anything special. Like, I feel that we've seen far better opening matches in AEW. It did feel like an opening match, get the crowd warmed up. But AEW has a track record of putting on these stellar opening matches, and this wasn't that. Basically, the storyline in this match was Max Caster. We know the Hurt Syndicate has been reaching out to him. MVP gave Caster the business card, and there was miscommunication between Caster and Anthony Bowens. Crowd was chanting F you, Caster, and he was getting thrown off by that. At one point, Billy Gunn had to try and get them on the same page, but in the end, the miscommunication was too much for them. Private Party pinned Caster with the gin and juice. I presume we're going to see the breakup of the Acclaimed sooner than later. I really do think it's run its course. How long can you do that scissor gimmick? You know, you got to change things up a little bit. Match was all right. Could have been on Dynamite. Next up, we had MJF versus Roderick Strong. MJF now the second match of the evening. He went from being the world champion, most dominant world champion, and is now the second match on a pay-per-view against Roderick Strong. MJF cut a promo before the match, tried to get the crowd against him, said that they're all white trash, just like Strong, brought up Strong's parents again. Strong immediately went after MJF. Crowd was very split because they like MJF, but he's also a bastard, so they're chanting, "He's our scumbag." No, he's not. Competitive match here between them. Strong, unfortunately, could not pick up the win, and this is no surprise. MJF was obviously winning this one. MJF picked up the victory with the Salt of the Earth submission, and I agree with Ian in the chat room. TV match did not need to be on pay-per-view. Probably MJF's weakest pay-per-view match that I can recall. Like, it was just an average wrestling match. Nothing special about it whatsoever. This was more about the post-match because afterwards, MJF put Strong's arm in a chair, stomped on it, and then Adam Cole ran down after this happened. MJF fled through the crowd. Kyle O'Reilly then showed up, and he was frustrated with Adam Cole, wondering why Adam Cole did not go out there sooner, and also blaming Cole for this happening to Roderick Strong. I really don't care about the storyline. They're trying to bring some drama to it. We're probably getting MJF versus Cole at World's End 1 year after the Devil angle. They're still trying to make this a thing. I don't care. I'm ready for this to be over. They're really doing a disservice to MJF by keeping him in this storyline. Really a disservice to Cole too. Just saying. So yeah, this was nothing special. I really wasn't expecting much, but this did not need to be on the pay-per-view. Next up, we had Mercedes Moné versus Kris Statlander for the TBS title. This was a very good match. I would say this did belong on the pay-per-view. You obviously have to have the women's matches on the show. This was the only one, but they gave them, I think, close to 20 minutes. They were able to have a pretty lengthy match, and it was very good. It was a very good match between these two. The wrestling is not Mercedes' issue. When she wrestles, she's really good. And Kris is very good as well. It was back and forth, and I really didn't have too much to complain about it. Kris was selling her knee, and that played a role in the match on several occasions. She hit a bunch of big moves, the Saturday Night Fever, the F5. Mercedes kept kicking out. Mercedes was able to avoid a 450 splash and targeted the injured knee of Statlander. Did the Eddie Guerrero moves, the Three Amigos, the frog splash. Kris kept kicking out. And then Kris went for the Saturday Night Fever again, but Mercedes actually bit her injured knee. And then Mercedes took advantage, rolled up Kris, and got the 1-2-3 victory. Went about as I expected. Mercedes not losing the title at this point. And yes, she did hit a lot of meteoras in the match, but she did pick up the victory. And Kris was helped to the back by a ringside doctor after the match. I did think it was very good. Next up, we had Hangman Adam Page versus Jay White, which was another pretty good match. Unfortunately, I did not care about it. And the crowd, they did react, but I felt like they only reacted to big spots. Not just this match, but during the entire show. Even the pay-per-view crowds are starting to become flat. I remember you would watch the pay-per-views and you'd have all those rabid, hot fans. They were not there for this show. This was in Newark, New Jersey, so it's a major wrestling area, metropolitan area, New York, New Jersey. But yeah, they didn't react to a whole lot. This match, like the previous match, was built around an injury, a worked injury, of course. So Adam Page targeted the ankle of Jay White. Jay White got dumped over the top early in the match, and he was selling his ankle. And Page, like a shark that smells blood, was going right after that ankle. But White was able to fight back. They traded shots, and they fought on the outside of the ring. And then Page busted out an ankle lock on the floor. White was barely able to beat the 10 count back into the ring. Page reapplied the ankle lock. White was able to escape. And then White put on his own submission. Page reached the ropes. Then Page recovered, hit 2 dead eyes. White kicked out. And then they countered each other. And then pretty much out of nowhere, Jay White hit the Blade Runner and got the 1-2-3 victory, which surprised me. This was, I think, the only match I got wrong on the entire show. The reason I picked Adam Page to win is because he lost at the last pay-per-view after winning the main event against Swerve. So I didn't think he would lose 2 pay-per-views in a row. And Jay White, they haven't really done a whole lot with him. He's been mostly in a trios group. But yeah, Jay White picks up the win clean. Match was good, but I had a hard time caring about it. And then afterwards, Adam Page attacked Jay White post-match on the stage. Christopher Daniels showed up, had some words with Page, and Page responded by striking Christopher Daniels. So Adam Page still a heel, or is he? More on that in a little bit. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on here with Adam Page, and I was even more confused later on. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Next up, we had Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, and Don Callis was out there on commentary. In my opinion, this was the best match of the show. Will Ospreay, like him or hate him, the guy can deliver in the ring, and these guys had great chemistry. I feel like Ospreay pretty much has great chemistry with anybody he's in the ring with. He always delivers, and this was no exception. This was another great Will Ospreay match, although I do feel like they toned it down a little bit, and it wasn't quite as intense as some of his other matches earlier this year. But it was a fantastic match. Match of the night for sure. Ospreay had a more serious demeanor in this match, and Kyle Fletcher was wearing a crown to the ring. And we did have another injury angle during this match, where this time it was the back. It was Will Ospreay's back that got hurt during the match, and Kyle Fletcher was going after that. Fletcher was able to counter an Oz cutter with a neck breaker, hit a power bomb. Ospreay kicked out of that. So a lot of kicking out. And I don't know if this was done to troll WWE or not, but there were a lot of pile drivers on this show. So they had the steel steps on the outside of the ring, and Kyle Fletcher gave Ospreay a jumping tombstone off the apron onto the steel steps, which was a crazy spot. But guess what? Ospreay recovered. That wasn't the end of the match. So I guess he's tougher than Randy Orton, right? Then back in the ring, Ospreay was able to make a comeback. He had a tombstone pile driver on the floor. Fletcher was able to get back up from that. So yeah, the pile driver is just a regular move in AEW. In WWE, it's banned. Somebody gets hit, and that's it. So then Ospreay went for the hidden blade twice. He hit it on the third attempt, but could not make the cover. Both guys were down. The crowd was chanting AEW. Ospreay hit a Styles Clash, followed by a fourth hidden blade, but did not get the job done. Fletcher managed to kick out. Quite impressive. And then they fought on the apron. Fletcher got Ospreay back in the ring, hit another pile driver. Ospreay kicked out. Then Fletcher was trash talking, and he finally was able to finish off Ospreay with a brain buster in the corner, picked up the 1-2-3 victory, beat him clean, and I believe I picked Ospreay to win this just because Ospreay's been losing quite a few matches as of late. But yeah, he put over Kyle Fletcher clean in the middle, which, hey, that's how you try to make a star. You give them a clean win, no interference from Don Callis, no screwdriver, no shenanigans, just a clean win for Kyle Fletcher. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move if you're trying to build up Kyle Fletcher as a superstar. We'll see what the follow-up is, because I think back to other times that guys went over clean and nothing ended up amounting to anything. But yeah, really good match. To me, this was the highlight of the show. And afterwards, Mark Davis showed up and had to check on Ospreay, and Fletcher was like, you two guys belong each other. Got a couple of super chats. One here from RD Beats. The founder of AAPW passed away. Very sorry to hear that. And they're doing a memorial show in his honor on December 7th. Thank you for that, RD, and sorry to hear that. Make sure you guys follow him for more information on that. And Teaching in Color sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, I think what people have to realize, Adam Page never beat Swerve. He KO'd Swerve with a chair, never got a 1-2-3 victory. Well, he won the fight. It was a brutal fight, and Adam Page won the fight. He was the last man standing in the fight. So if you look at it from that perspective, it wasn't your regular wrestling match. It was a fight, and Adam Page won that fight in the main event of the pay-per-view. But thank you for that super chat. Thank you, RD Beats. And yeah, I missed 2 matches on the show. Next up, we had a segment with Mina Shirakawa and Mariah May, the women's champion. We had this champagne championship celebration. Mina called Mariah May the love of her life. And the two of them started to celebrate with the champagne. But then Mariah attempted to hit Mina with the bottle, but missed. Mina saw it coming. Mina was shocked, and Mariah spun her face. So Mina then speared Mariah off the stage. They crashed through a table, and Mina was busted open. She may have broken a tooth or something. It was a good angle, but why was this on the pay-per-view? You didn't do Tony Storm's return. This didn't need to be on the pay-per-view. And I'm going to criticize this because Tony Khan insists on doing these long-ass 4-hour pay-per-views. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're doing 4-hour pay-per-views, there's no room for filler. So if you're putting filler on the show, I'm going to call you out on it. This could have been on Dynamite. Did not need to be on the pay-per-view. I feel like the only reason they did it was because they had one women's match and they had to get more women on the show. You did not need this on the pay-per-view. You could have cut out the first 2 matches. And I hate to say this, you could have cut out MJF and maybe cut out a few other things. Did a 3-hour pay-per-view. This was just too long. And this particular show, it wasn't at the level of some of the other AEW shows. And thus, it felt even longer than 4 hours. Next up, we had Jack Perry versus Daniel Garcia for the TNT Championship. The crowd did not care about this match too much, and I honestly don't blame them. Jack Perry's gimmick to me has been a bust. The scapegoat, I don't care about it. Daniel Garcia, like they kind of push him, then they don't. He's not exactly the most charismatic guy. People like him because he's a good wrestler, but doesn't really bring much else to the table. Perry was trying to avoid him running around. And then Perry took control with a DDT to Garcia on the floor. And then they got back in the ring. Perry put on the snare trap. Garcia got to the rope. Perry continued to deliver offense. And you had Daddy Magic out there on commentary. And Perry was yelling at him. And then Perry powerbombed Garcia through the timekeeper's table, dumped some trash on him. And Garcia was barely able to beat the referee's 10 count. I never buy into these spots because everybody always beats the 10 count. It's not even climactic at this point. If you want people to think that, hey, he might not make it back, then every once in a while somebody needs to not beat the 10 count. Just saying. So then Jack Perry was feeling a little bit desperation. He got the TNT championship. He dropped it next to Garcia. He dared Garcia to hit him with the title. Garcia gave it to the referee, and Perry took advantage with a low blow, hit the knee strike. Garcia kicked out, and then Garcia made a comeback, hit a pile driver. Guess what happened? Perry kicked out of it. Pile drivers are just moves in AEW. Garcia hit another pile driver. Then he put on a leg submission and finally got the win to become the new TNT champion. Thankfully, Jack Perry's reign is over. And best of luck to Daniel Garcia. This is his first big win in AEW, picking up the TNT title. And we'll see where it goes from here. Congratulations to Daniel Garcia. Match was all right, but I just could not get invested in it. Next up, we had Konosuke Takeshita versus Ricochet. Now, Takeshita's had some great matches, and even Ricochet's had some great matches, but ever since coming to AEW, I feel like Ricochet hasn't really stepped up next level. Like, people might say Ricochet was held down in WWE. He might say it himself. But in AEW, I feel like he hasn't given us like an all-time classic performance. And it makes me wonder if Will Ospreay's the real deal, because Ospreay can have a great match with anybody, but I feel like when Takeshita's in there with Ricochet, maybe they just don't have the chemistry. But to me, this match never really reached next level like you might hope it would. And they threw this match together. It was announced literally 2 days before the show, after we did our predictions video. And it was good. It was still a good match, but it felt like a Raw TV match, like any of Ricochet's Raw matches we've seen over the past several years. To me, this was no better than any of those. And this is a pay-per-view match you're paying $50 for. And it was just good. It never got to that next level as far as I'm concerned. Now, Don Callis was once again on commentary. And we had another match with an injury. Once again, we had a back situation. So Ricochet was slammed back first into the timekeeper's barricade. They did this too many times on the show too, with the worked injuries where the body parts hurt and the heel is exploiting it. They did this in like 4 matches on the show. So it was a little bit overkill. And Don Callis left the commentary desk once Ricochet started to make a comeback. Ricochet did do a couple dives, did a springboard 450. Then Takeshita regained the upper hand, took off his knee pad, hit the power drive knee. Ricochet kicked out of that. And then Ricochet came off the top with the shooting star press. Takeshita kicked out of that. Ricochet went up top again, but this time Takeshita caught him and delivered an avalanche Falcon Arrow, got the 1-2-3 victory to retain the championship. I went with Ricochet, so I think I actually got 3 wrong on this. I went with Ricochet just because he's already lost in the shuffle now. So if you're not going to give him a title or push him, then why did you even sign him in the first place? Unless he just couldn't resist the money and Ospreay pushed for it. But yeah, Ricochet is pretty much in the same spot he was in WWE, just on the lesser brand at this point. We had Bobby Lashley versus Swerve Strickland, which I thought was pretty good, hard-hitting match. Lashley was dominating for the most part, and he was even getting confident to the point where he would go for the cover and then lift up Swerve. You had some outside interference. Shelton Benjamin, though, he pushed it too far. On his second interference attempt, the referee caught him, ejected him from ringside, and then Swerve gave Lashley a DDT on the apron, and then Swerve gave Lashley a Swerve stomp through the announce table. So Swerve busting out the big moves here. He got Lashley back in the ring, and he hit the house call kick. He came off the top of the Swerve stomp. Lashley, though, was able to kick out. Then they ended up on the outside of the ring, and MVP provided a distraction. He got in Swerve's face. Lashley took advantage. He speared Swerve through the ringside barricade, got him back in the ring, hit another spear, put on the hurt lock, and that was it. Swerve passed out. Bobby Lashley picks up a decisive victory over Swerve Strickland, as he should have. This was Lashley's first pay-per-view match. And like I said with Ricochet, if you're going to sign the guy, you might as well push him. And with Lashley, you really should push the guy when you take a look at him. Ricochet can be like an underdog, but Lashley has to be dominant. He picks up the win over Swerve. And shout out to LaShawn Davis, who sent in a $2 super chat, says, this pay-per-view was way too much. Happy birthday, by the way. Well, I appreciate the birthday comment very much for that. And yes, I agree with Ian. The DDT on the apron did look a little bit scary for Lashley, but he appears to be okay. Match was good. They beat up Prince Nana after the match, and it was more or less what it needed to be. So it was fine. It was a good match, and yeah, it should be on the pay-per-view. It's Bobby Lashley's first pay-per-view match. Our final match of the evening was for the AEW World Championship. Jon Moxley versus Orange Cassidy. Now, they were doing the ring introductions, and Orange Cassidy immediately attacked Moxley. Orange punch after orange punch. They brawled around ringside, but then Moxley drove Orange Cassidy headfirst into the steel steps. Orange got busted open, and at this point, Moxley was in firm control. You had Orange Cassidy bleeding all over the place. Moxley was targeting the wound, and then Moxley actually scratched the back of Orange Cassidy to the point where Cassidy started bleeding on his back. I mean, that was quite brutal. That was the you sick F moment of the evening. And then Cassidy started to fight back. They traded shots. And then Cassidy did multiple orange punches, hit the breach break, and Excalibur pointed out how last year Orange Cassidy beat Moxley with the beach break, but not this time. Moxley kicked out, but it was enough for Death Riders to feel desperate, so they showed up at ringside. But then the conglomeration showed up to even the odds. Then Willow Nightingale showed up and attacked Marina Shafir. I guess we're going to see a match with them. And they had that briefcase that Marina Shafir was using. Orange Cassidy took it. He hit Moxley with it, went for the cover, but Moxley kicked out. And the crowd did buy into they did buy into this as a near fall. And they were getting hot at this point. You know, they were quiet for a lot of the show, but they did get hot here at the end of the main event. But then Wheeler Yuta, Wheelie showed up, took a cheap shot while the referee wasn't looking with the Daniel Bryan running knee. And Moxley picked up the win with the Death Rider. Match was fine. It was what I expected. It was a little much, but, you know, Moxley likes to do these realistic-looking fights with the blood and, you know, the sick, gruesome moments. And then after the match, they took, like, some kind of alcohol or some chemical, and they were dumping it into the wound of Orange Cassidy. And at this point, this is where things got really weird and quite chaotic. So we had Hangman Adam Page, who lost to Jay White earlier. He showed up and he attacked Wheeler Yuta with a steel chair. Then Christian Cage showed up, attacked Moxley from behind. Adam Page handed over the not Money in the Bank contract to Christian Cage, and Christian stood over Moxley. He was about to cash in. Adam Page left, but then Jay White showed up and took out Christian Cage with the Blade Runner. Then the Death Riders attacked Jay White. Death Riders left the arena. They went to the parking lot area. And then all of a sudden, as they were about to get into their truck, Darby Allin crashed like at 50 miles an hour right into their truck. They managed to escape into another vehicle. Darby Allin, despite crashing into this truck at like 50 miles an hour, he popped right out of it because, of course, and he was yelling out profanities. He dropped an F-bomb, and yeah, he's coming off a loss to Claudio, but he's still going after the Death Riders, and that was the end of the show. Now, before we get to my thoughts on that and the overall ending of the show, shout out to Oofman Oscar, who was on our predictions panel for Full Gear. He was there at the show. I saw a couple of his photos and videos. He said, like we said on Thursday, AEW delivers with pay-per-views. Ospreay Fletcher was the match of the night, which I do agree with. He is glad he went. We now sit and wait to see where they go for World's End. Happy birthday again. And I appreciate that. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody again for the birthday wishes from yesterday. Much appreciated. And I'm glad you had a good time, Moofman. Apparently he paid like $50 for the show, which if the pay-per-view is $50 and you can go see it in the arena, you might as well go see it in the arena. I thought the main event was good. The post-match stuff was very WCW-like. It was all over the place. Like I felt like they just wanted to do a bunch of things at the end of the show to try and add some buzz and create a memorable ending to the pay-per-view. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about the ending, you know, the Christian stuff and then the Darby Allin car crash thing. I mean, it almost felt like an actual car crash, the way everything was going. I guess I mean like a figurative car crash, not an actual car crash. We did get an actual car crash, but, you know, looking at it figuratively, it was a bit of a wreck. So all in all, I thought the pay-per-view was solid. I think the streak of really great AEW shows came to an end, though. I do not think this was a great show. It's too long, which is a standard problem for AEW shows, and you really didn't have any all-time great matches. And in defense of AEW, they set the bar so high with the pay-per-views that it's hard to follow a lot of them. They couldn't do it this time. They weren't able to capture the magic of some of the other pay-per-views. We had, and how can you? We had Sting's retirement earlier this year, and we had a lot of other great moments, All In at Wembley Stadium. Sometimes you just can't hit a home run every time. And I think that the best match, Ospreay's match, was great, but if I had to rank every Will Ospreay match on pay-per-view this year, this would probably be the bottom one. Like, I'd even put Takeshita's match from Ospreay's pay-per-view debut earlier this year above the Fletcher match. And, the Bryan match was top tier. I mean, the MJF match was top tier. This was just a great match. It was the right booking decision, even though Ospreay's been losing quite a bit. You want to make something out of Kyle Fletcher. He needed to win here. And everything else was good, but some of the stuff just did not need to be on the pay-per-view. Like, it didn't – it almost felt like an extended, overly long Dynamite that maybe had like one great match, maybe a couple borderline great matches, but it just felt like an extended Dynamite and not like a top-tier AEW pay-per-view. So, yeah, I feel like I have to give it a B-. I'm not going to go below that because I still think it was better than most wrestling pay-per-views in history. If I'm judging all WWE pay-per-views, all WCW pay-per-views, even TNA pay-per-views I've seen, this was better than a lot of them. So I can't go lower than a B-. It was good. I don't feel like I got ripped off, but I will say this. I would not go out of my way to recommend the show. Like, I feel like this was the closest thing to a skippable pay-per-view that we've seen from AEW. Like, I feel like this is one you really don't need to go out of your way to watch if you missed it. Yeah, you'll get some good wrestling, but nothing about this I feel like I'll remember in 6 months. I really don't think there was anything too significant. I feel like that back scratch was the most interesting thing on the entire show as far as something I'll remember in the future. But they do so many of those gross out moments. Those are all starting to blend together now. Shout out to Oofman, who sent in another $10 super chat. Thank you, Oof. I appreciate it. Oof says, in defense for the women's segment, they needed something for us to calm down to after the Ospreay and Fletcher match, and better a segment than a match. I mean, fair point, but if you're going to do that segment, I really feel like Toni Storm should have returned, or they should have had somebody appear. Like, it just felt too much like a random segment that they could have done on TV. But yeah, I get what you're saying. You need to have your cool down segments, and sometimes you want to do a cool down segment instead of a match. But when the pay-per-views are so long, I just would rather not see these segments on the pay-per-view to begin with. Just my take on it. But thank you, Oof. Again, glad you enjoyed the show. And yeah, no surprise debut or return. You can't do it every pay-per-view. Crowd wasn't great, but it was solid. Thank you guys for watching the recap. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up on No DQ's YouTube channel. If you're watching it on Facebook or Twitter, please consider heading over to YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give the video a thumbs up or a like. It's very helpful. And even leave a comment. Your favorite match, least favorite match, any thoughts on the pay-per-view, feel free to leave a comment on the No DQ YouTube channel. And again, you can check out full results over on NoDQ.com. And that's it for me. I'm heading to bed. Have a great night, everybody. And we'll be back 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Sunday for Survivor Series predictions, War Games, That's coming up next on the No DQ YouTube channel. Say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.